The Resonance Matrix, Episode 1, The Pulse of the Crowd. Hello and welcome. Before we speak, before we even think about the words we are about to exchange, let us simply be here. Welcome to the Resonance Matrix, a mirror linguistic hypothesis series. I'm James Miller. In the work we've done together across the broader constellation of this project, through the philosophical spine of the inversiverse, the raw shadow work of the unfiltered human on the fringe, and the deep somatic explorations of the body knows, we have arrived at a singular, inescapable truth. Your body never lies. It speaks in whispers, in jolts, in sighs, and in shakes. It is the primary narrator of our realities, recording every racing heartbeat and every heavy silence as a signal from your nervous system. Our previous series, Mirror Talk, served as a gateway. It was there that we began to dismantle the myth that language is merely a dictionary of symbols. We started to remember a language we've always spoken, the language of safety, tone, and reflection. We explored the first word that spoke to you, not the first noun you uttered, but the tonal blueprint that told your infant body whether the world was a space for connection or a site for correction. We learned that meaning is not understood in the mind. It is mirrored in the physiology. But today, the mirror is widening. If Mirror Talk was about the intimate me-to-you dyad, the way two nervous systems co-regulate in the quiet of a room, then the resonance matrix is about the field that contains us all. We are moving from the study of the individual mirror to the study of the resonance matrix. We are moving from the whisper to the roar. The somatic arrival. I want you to pause. Truly pause. Close your eyes if it feels safe to do so. Notice the weight of your body, not as a concept of weight, but as the literal pressure of your bones against the chair, the floor, or the ground beneath you. Feel the air against your skin. Is it cool? Still? Moving. Now, bring your attention to your throat, the threshold of your voice. Notice if there is a tightness there, a lump, or a barricade that has been built over years of swallowed words and edited truths. The throat is an emotional borderland. Above it lies the cognition of your thoughts, and below it lies the raw intuition of your heart. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Imagine that breath traveling down past the threshold, widening your ribs and anchoring into the belly. As you exhale, let it out through your mouth like fog on glass, gentle, audible, and unforced. In this pause, you are engaging in the most fundamental act of the mirror linguistic hypothesis. You are noticing your state. You are acknowledging that before a single word is spoken, your nervous system has already chosen a tone. The shift from dyad to field. In our foundational research, we proposed that meaning is transmitted through mirrored autonomic responses, mediated by mechanisms like mirror neurons and affective circuits. We argued that language functions simultaneously as a semantic and somatic system. A harsh command can accelerate your heart rate. A soothing lullaby can slow your breathing. This is the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH. To speak is to regulate another's nervous system. But we are often taught to believe that we exist in isolation. We are told that our nervous system is a private island, and that our communication is merely the shipping of symbolic packages back and forth across a channel. The resonance matrix challenges that isolation. It proposes that we are physiologically entangled. We are nodes in an invisible architecture of resonance. When we step out of our homes and into the street, when we sit in a crowded cafe, or when we stand in a stadium, we are not just near others. We are being entrained by them. We are entering a mirror linguistic field, a collective ecology of nervous systems that shape us long before we exchange a single hello. The myth of the individual. Think of the tonal blueprints we've discussed, the survival dialects of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. We often think of these as personal traits. I'm a freezer, or I tend to fawn. But in the matrix, we see that these are often not just personal responses, but field responses. We have been trained to ignore the signals of the field. We accept labels like good or bad behavior without questioning what those labels mean for the collective. Society treats our physiological reactions as a moral scorecard. Sit still and you're good, show your true signals, and you're bad. But the matrix doesn't care about morality. It cares about resonance. When you enter a room that is thick with the tonal residue of fear, your body knows it before your mind can name it. Your heart begins to race, your shoulders lift, and your breath becomes shallow. You aren't choosing to be anxious. You are mirroring the field. You are entrained to the dominant frequency of the matrix. The invitation to awareness. This series is not a doctrine. It is a map in progress. It is a journey through mirrors rather than milestones. We are here to explore how words live in the body, how tone encodes trust or tension, and how revoicing our inner world can re-pattern the outer field. We are here to decode the nervous system language, NSL, of the collective, to understand how the music of belonging is written, and how we can learn to rewrite it. In the episodes to come, we will explore the pulse of the crowd, the large-scale synchrony that happens in stadiums and protests. We will look at the architecture of silence in our institutions. We will trace the ancestral resonance that lives in our very DNA, and we will look at the silicon mirror of AI and technology. But it all begins here, in this frequency, in the recognition that you are not a separate island of meaning. You are a participant in a vast somatic conversation that never stops, a final breath of arrival. So one more time, feel your feet on the ground. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. You don't need to analyze this. You don't need to agree with the hypothesis. Simply notice. Your body is already fluent in this language. It has been listening to the matrix since before you were born. As we move forward, remember, to understand language is to understand ourselves and to understand how the words we inherit may not always be the words we want to live by. Let the silence that follows this introduction be a space for your own nervous system to exhale. That silence is language too. It is the threshold of the field. Let's step into the matrix, the quintessential mirror. In the previous section, we cast a wide net into the resonance matrix. We looked at the field, we looked at the us. But to understand the ocean, one must first understand the drop. To understand the matrix, we must return to the quintessential mirror. The mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, is built on a single radical pillar. Meaning is mirrored in physiology. For over a century, the dominant theories of linguistics have told us a different story. Ferdinand de Saussure famously described linguistic signs as arbitrary pairings of signifiers and signifieds. He taught us that the word dog has no intrinsic connection to the four-legged creature. It is merely a convention, a symbolic code we all agreed upon. Noam Chomsky took this further, positing a universal grammar, an innate cognitive substrate for syntax that exists almost independently of the body or the environment. Even Ludwig Wittgenstein, who brilliantly argued that the meaning of a word is its use in the language, ultimately declared that the limits of our language are the limits of our world. In these perspectives, language is a system of representation, a way for one mind to send a symbolic package to another mind. The MLH proposes that this symbolic view, while powerful, is incomplete. It ignores the body. It ignores the nervous system. It ignores the fact that when I speak to you, I'm not just sending you a code. I'm sending you a signal. Hello one, meaning as mirrored physiology. If you want to understand what a word means, do not look it up in a dictionary. Take note of your heart rate. Feel the tension in your jaw. Feel at the depth of your breath. Meaning is not a cognitive achievement. It is an autonomic event. When we communicate, our nervous systems seek a shared state. If I speak to you from a place of genuine, regulated safety, your mirror neurons and affective circuits attempt to simulate that state within your own body. You understand me because your body mirrors the physiological signature of my intention. This is the quintessential mirror. Before the brain translates a sound into a concept, the nervous system has already decoded the state. We are resonators before we are thinkers. Pillar 2. Words as carriers of charge. The second fundamental of the MLH is that words are not inert signs, they are carriers of physiological charge. Think of a word like stop. In a dictionary, it simply means to cease an action. But in the body, its meaning is entirely dependent on the charge it carries. For a child who heard stop barked as a sharp command, paired with a tightening face and a withdrawal of safety, the word becomes a somatic marker. It inherits the sympathetic activation of that moment. Decades later, a partner might say stop in a completely different context, yet the body reacts as if it were back in that original scene of correction. The throat tightens, the breath shallows. The meaning of the word for that nervous system is not cease, but danger. We call this emotional inheritance. We do not just learn vocabulary, we inherit a somatic lexicon. We learn the feel of words through caregiver modeling and cultural reinforcement. Taboo words, sacred chants, and political slogans all elicit measurable autonomic responses, shifts in heart rate variability, skin conductance, and hormonal release, because they have been charged by the collective. Pillar 3. Prosody as the primary signal. This brings us to the third quintessential pillar. Prosody is the primary signal. Prosody is the music of language, the rhythm, the pitch, the tempo, and the melody of the voice. Long before an infant understands the semantic content of I love you, they understand the prosody of a lullaby. Their heart rate slows, their cortisol levels drop, they are being co-regulated by sound. Conversely, a harsh, flat, or monotone voice can trigger what Stephen Porges calls neuroception, the subconscious detection of threat, long before any cognitive analysis occurs. You can speak the kindest words in the world, but if your prosody is sharp, the listener's body will hear the sharpness, not the kindness. Prosody bypasses the cognitive decoding of meaning and speaks directly to the autonomic nervous system. It is the carrier wave for the mirror. Pillar 4. Regulation is fluency. In the MLH, we redefine what it means to be fluent in a language. Regulation is fluency. Traditionally, fluency is measured by the size of your vocabulary or your mastery of grammar. But in the resonance matrix, true fluency is acoustic coherence, the alignment between your internal state, your tone, and your truth. When you speak from a regulated state, your voice is full, melodic, and paced. There is a synchrony between your heart, your lungs, and your larynx. Listeners feel this alignment before they even process your words. When you are dysregulated, stuck in a fight, flight, or freeze state, your language reflects that. The fighter's voice sharpens, the flyer's sentences sprint, the freezer's words vanish, the fawner's tone over-adapts. This is embodied syntax. Your nervous system is editing your grammar before your mind even catches up. To be fluent is to be congruent. It is to speak from a body that is home to itself. Pillar 5. The ineffable gap. The final quintessential pillar is the recognition of the ineffable gap. We can use fMRI to mimic dynamic changes in the brain. We can use EEG to track oscillatory activity. We can measure heart rate variability, HRV, and electrodermal activity, EDA, to find the physiological footprints of language. These tools are essential. They anchor the MLH in empirical observation, but they do not exhaust the phenomenon. There is a structural gap between the measurement and the resonance. Science can record the arousal shift caused by a ritual chant, but it cannot capture the qualia of being moved by it. It can track the hormonal correlates of bonding, but not the felt quality of belonging. The MLH treats this gap not as a weakness, but as a defining feature of the human experience. Meaning is always more than its measurement. Reflective arrival, take a slow breath. Notice which of these pillars resonates most in your body right now. Does your heart recognize the idea that words carry a charge? Does your throat feel the weight of embodied syntax? Do you feel the ineffable presence in the silence between my sentences? This is the quintessential mirror. It is the understanding that language is a physiological ecology. It is the recognition that every time you open your mouth, you are not just communicating an idea, you are touching another's nervous system at a distance. And once we understand how this mirror works between two people, we are ready to ask, what happens when it scales? What happens when the mirror becomes a matrix? Build observation. Scaling the matrix. We have spent our time in the center of the mirror. We have looked at the quintessential mechanics, how one person speaks and another's body responds. But now we must step back. We must allow the lens to widen until the individual faces blur into a single breathing entity. In the original framework of the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, we focused on the dyadic mirror, the two-way street of co-regulation. We looked at how a mother's hush slows an infant's pulse, or how a partner's sharp fine sends a sympathetic chill down your spine. But the truth we must confront today is that we rarely exist in a vacuum of two. We live, move, and breathe inside a resonance matrix. And to understand the pulse of the crowd, we have to introduce MLH field theory. The leap from one to many, imagine a single drop of water falling into a still pond. You see the rings, that is the dyad. The interaction is clean, traceable, and direct. Now imagine 10,000 drops falling simultaneously. The rings overlap. They interfere with one another. They create peaks and troughs that no single drop could produce on its own. Eventually, the individual ripples vanish, and the entire surface of the pond begins to move as a single undulating wave. This is the shift from mirroring to entrainment. In MLH field theory, I propose that when human beings gather in proximity, linked by a showcase, a shared rhythm, or a shared word, our individual nervous systems begin to surrender their sovereignty to a global autonomic state. We stop being isolated islands of physiology and become nodes in a collective circuit. The architecture of the field. What is the field? It is not just a collection of people. It is the physiological ecology created by the space between us. In the MLH concept paper, I discussed how language functions as a somatic system. In a crowd, this somatic system is amplified. Every voice contributes a tonal charge. Everybody contributes a rhythmic pulse. When these charges and pulses align, they create acoustic coherence at scale. Think of a stadium. When the home team scores, 60,000 people don't just decide to cheer. A wave of sympathetic activation sweeps through the stands at the speed of sound. Before you have cognitively processed the goal, your body has already caught the arousal of the person next to you. Your mirror neurons are firing in massive synchronized chains. This is not socializing. This is large-scale synchrony. In this state, the matrix is no longer a metaphor. It is a measurable biological event. Heart rates across the stadium begin to oscillate in phase. Breathing patterns synchronize. The tonal blueprint of the crowd becomes the primary regulator of your own nervous system. The vagal superhighway. To understand how we scale the mirror, we have to look at the vagus nerve, specifically through the lens of polyvagal theory applied to groups. In a joyad, we use our social engagement system, the ventral vagal complex, to signal safety through facial expressions and prosody. But in a crowd, the signal is different. The safety signal of a crowd is rhythm. Rhythm is the oldest form of nervous system language. Before humans had syntax, we had the beat of the drum and the chant of the tribe. Because rhythm provides predictability. And to a nervous system, predictability equals safety. When a crowd chants in unison, they are creating a massive rhythmic vagal anchor. The repetition of the sound, the low guttural vibration of 1,000 chests, acts as a collective hush. It overrides individual neuroceptive mismatches. Even if you feel personally anxious, the dominant frequency of the field can pull your nervous system into a state of shared calm or shared rage. The loss of the I, this is the capability of the MLH that we must explore with caution. When we enter the resonance matrix of a crowd, our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles individual logic and critical thinking, often goes offline or becomes secondary to the amygdala and the brainstem. MLH calls this autonomic overdrive. In a field of high arousal, like a protest or a riot, the mirrored physiology becomes so intense that the ineffable gap between individuals disappears. You no longer feel like you observing them. You feel like a cell in a larger body. The word being spoken by the crowd becomes your own internal monologue, not because you agree with it, but because your body has entrained to it. This is how survival dialects, fight, flight, freeze, scale up. A crowd can move into a collective fight state in seconds, fueled by the tonal charge of a single electrified voice. Or it can fall into a collective freeze, a heavy oppressive silence that tells everybody in the room to shrink and stay small. Field observation, the invisible hands of the crowd. In our series Invisible Hands, we looked at how manipulation targets the body. In the context of field theory, we see that the most powerful invisible hand is the ambient prosody of the collective. Politicians, performers, and preachers have known this intuitively for millennia. They don't just speak to a crowd, they play the crowd like an instrument. They use their own voice to trigger a specific autonomic response, knowing that the mirror linguistic effect will ripple through the front rows and then amplify as it moves back. By the time the person in the last row feels the urge to stand or shout, they aren't responding to the speaker's words. They are responding to the physiological field that has been engineered in the room, the qualitative weight of the many. As we observe this scaling, we must return to the ineffable. You can measure the decibels of a crowd. You can track the synchronized heartbeats of a choir, but science cannot yet describe the feeling of being swept up. That moment where your personal boundaries dissolve and you feel the pulse of the crowd as your own pulse. This is the resonance matrix in its most raw form. It is the realization that your nervous system is not a closed circuit. It is an open system, constantly being rewritten by the fields you choose to stand in, refining the observation. As you move through your day, take time to start noticing the fields. When you walk into a grocery store, what is the global autonomic state? Is it hurried and fragmented, flight, or is it dull and heavy, dorsal vagal? When you sit in a theater, notice the moment the lights go down. Feel the collective exhale of 200 people. That is the moment the matrix activates. We are not just individuals who happen to be near each other. We are a co-regulatory ecology. And the word that is being spoken by the field is the word your body is currently learning to say. The mirror has scaled. We've seen how the drop becomes the ocean. Now we must move from the theory of the field to the literal experience of it. The scene, the universal soundscape. Close your eyes. I want to take you somewhere, not as a spectator, but as a node. I want you to step into a scene you have likely inhabited a dozen times in your life, though perhaps you never had the lexicon to describe what was actually happening within you. Imagine a city square. It is dusk. The air is cold enough to see your breath, that small private cloud of your own biology hitting the world. You are walking toward the center. At first, you are an individual. You have your own thoughts, your own private lexicon of worries and to-do lists. Your heart rate is yours alone, governed by the pace of your own stride. But then the sound changes, the perimeter of the matrix. As you cross the invisible boundary of the square, the acoustic architecture of the city shifts. The fragmented noise of traffic and individual conversations begins to fall away, replaced by a singular heavy vibration. It is the sound of 10,000 people standing in the same tonal state. Notice your body as you approach the perimeter. Your social engagement system, that ventral vagal complex we've talked about so often, is scanning. It's looking for the prosody of the many. In the dyad, you look for a smile or a soft hello. But here, your neuroception is reading the ambient charge of the air itself. Is the air sharp? Is it heavy? You feel a slight tightening in your solar plexus. This is your body's first field observation. You are detecting the global autonomic state before you have even seen a single face. The mirror linguistic effect is already beginning. Your heart is starting to pick up the tempo of the distant rhythmic clapping. You aren't choosing this. Your nervous system is simply checking into the matrix. The rhythmic entrainment, you move deeper into the crowd. Now there is no space between your shoulder and the stranger next to you. In our previous work, we explored proximity as a signal of safety or threat. Here, proximity has reached a tipping point. You can feel the heat radiating off the bodies around you. Suddenly, a chant begins. It starts in the front, a low, guttural roar that travels through the crowd like a physical wave. We do not consent no more, no more. It isn't just the words, it is the prosody. It is a staccato, two-beat rhythm, stressed, unstressed. As the chant hits you, notice what happens to your throat. Even if you don't open your mouth, the muscles in your larynx begin to micro-contract in sympathy. This is subvocal mirroring. Your body is preparing to join the acoustic coherence. The beat, thump thump, thump thump, matches the vagal superhighway of the collective. Your breathing, which was once your own, begins to synchronize with the stranger to your left. You are exhaling on the more and inhaling on the no. You are no longer breathing for yourself. You are being breathed by the field. The flashpoint of Synchrony A speaker steps onto the stage. They don't speak yet. They simply stand there, absorbing the resonance matrix they have helped create. When they do speak, their voice is electrified. They aren't using the clinical grammar of a teacher or the melodic prosody of a caregiver. They are using the linguistic command of the many. Their voice carries a sympathetic spike, a sharp, rising pitch at the end of every sentence that tells every amygdala in the square to wake up, pay attention, protect. Notice the shift in your own somatic lexicon. Your hands are clenched, your jaw is tight. Your ineffable gap hat space where you are you is shrinking. The speaker says a word, a carrier of charge like justice or betrayal, and the crowd explodes. The sound is so loud that it is no longer a sound. It is a pressure wave. It is a somatic flood. In this moment, the mirror linguistic hypothesis reaches its maximum scale. 60,000 mirror neuron systems are firing in a massive synchronized chain. You feel a surge of oxytocin mixed with adrenaline. It feels like belonging. It feels like power. But somatically, it is autonomic overdrive. You have entered a state of large-scale synchrony where your individual identity has been overwritten by the global state of the field. The dissolution of the I. Stay in this moment for a minute. Feel the ineffable quality of it. You couldn't explain to someone outside the square why you are so motivated, moved, ready to act, or why you feel like you could march with a greater intensity. Science could measure your cortisol or your heart rate, but it couldn't capture the qualia of this resonance. You are a node in the matrix. You are experiencing the field theory of language. The words being shouted are not concepts you are agreeing with. They are the carriers for a collective physiological discharge. You are home, but you are also not. The tonal residue, the walk home, the event ends. The speakers go silent. The crowd begins to fragment, like a massive organism being pulled apart into its constituent cells. You walk away, back toward the perimeter. But notice your body now. You are no longer in the square, but the pulse of the crowd is still in your fascia. Your heart takes 20 minutes to find its own rhythm again. Your voice, when you finally speak to the person at the subway kiosk, sounds foreign to you. It still carries the sharpness of the field. This is the tonal residue. This is the evidence that the matrix doesn't just reflect us, it re-scripts us. You walked in as a drop, you became the ocean. And now, as a drop again, you still carry the salt and the tide of the many. Reflection in the silence, the drone fades out completely, leaving only the sound of a single slow heartbeat. As you sit with the memory of that scene, I want you to ask yourself, how much of your individual state is actually yours? How much of the tone you carry today was inherited from the last matrix you stood in? We like to believe we are the authors of our own language. But in the pulse of the crowd, we see the truth. We are often the instruments upon which the collective field plays its music, like one tuning fork, receiving the resonant frequency and vibration of the fork that was struck. Take a breath. Reclaim your own rhythm. You are back in the room. You are back in your own body. But you now know the secret of the field. We have felt the pulse. We have inhabited the scene. Now, we must move from the experience to the anatomy. We must ask why our biology is so eager to disappear into the many. In the next segment, we move from the visceral experience of the scene into the clinical and philosophical marrow of the work. We deep dive into the neurobiology of the field, explaining why the body is so eager to dissolve into the collective and how the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, operates at a cellular and systemic level. We have felt the pulse. We have inhabited the scene. We have stood in that metaphorical square and felt our breathing synchronize with 10,000 strangers. But now we must ask the hard question, why? Why is the human body so willing, so eager, even, to surrender its hard-won individuality to the collective? Why does the mirror linguistic effect scale so seamlessly from a whisper in a nursery to a roar in a stadium? To answer this, we have to look at the anatomy of the field. We have to understand the biological infrastructure that makes the resonance matrix possible. The mirroring circuitry, beyond the individual brain. The first pillar of this anatomy is the mirror neuron system, MNS. When I first discussed the mirror linguistic hypothesis in my concept paper, We looked at the MNS as the mechanism for dyadic empathy, but in the field, something more complex happens. We aren't just mirroring a single action, we are performing a mass-scale simulation. Research in effective neuroscience suggests that our brains are constantly running internal models of the people around us. In a crowd, your brain isn't just modeling one person, it is calculating the average physiological state of the environment. If the majority of the people around you are in a state of sympathetic arousal, the fight or flight state, your mirror neurons begin to feed that data into your own limbic system. You aren't making a choice to be excited or angry. Your brain is simply following its evolutionary mandate to align with the dominant frequency. In the wild, if 99 members of your tribe suddenly bolt, and you stay behind to critically analyze the situation, you don't survive. The matrix is an evolutionary survival mechanism. It is the biology of the many overriding the logic of the one. Collective neuroception, the vagal antenna. To understand how we read the field, we have to look at polyvagal theory and the concept of neuroception. As we've established, neuroception is the body's subconscious surveillance system. It scans for cues of safety, danger, and life threat without involving the thinking brain. In the context of the resonance matrix, we are engaged in collective neuroception. Your vagus nerve, specifically the ventral vagal branch, is like a biological antenna. It is tuned to acoustic coherence. When a crowd chants in rhythm, or when a congregation sings in harmony, they are creating a massive external safety signal. The rhythm of the crowd mimics the prosody of safety we first learned from our caregivers. Even if the words of the chant are aggressive, the rhythm of the chant provides a somatic anchor. This is the neuroceptive mismatch of the field. Your mind might hear the danger in the words, but your body feels the belonging in the beat. This is how humans can be led into acts of collective violence or collective heroism. The vagal antenna prioritizes the belonging signal of the field over the survival signal of the individual. Heart rate synchrony, biofield entrainment. One of the most measurable aspects of the anatomy of the field is heart rate variability, HRV, synchrony. In the MLH concept paper, I noted that the meaning is transmitted through mirrored autonomic states. In recent years, studies of ritual, specifically the firewalking rituals in Spain and communal chanting in India, have shown that the heart rates of participants and even spectators begin to synchronize in real time. This is what we call biofield entrainment. We are not just hearing the crowd, we are being paced by it. When you stand in a high arousal field, the tonal charge of the collective acts as an external pacemaker. Your SA node, the heart's natural pacemaker, begins to adjust its firing rate to match the global pulse. This creates a state of physiological monoculture. When everyone in a room is breathing at the same rate, and their hearts are beating in the same phase, the mirror linguistic gap vanishes. You are no longer separate. You are a single distributed nervous system. The ineffable chemistry, oxytocin and the social glue. We cannot talk about the anatomy of the field without talking about the ineffable gap. We can measure the spikes in oxytocin and endorphins that occur during large-scale synchrony. We know that rhythmic movement and shared vocalization, chanting, cheering, trigger the release of these bonding chemicals. This is the social glue that allows the resonance matrix to override individual self-preservation. But here is where the science hits the wall. We can measure the chemistry, but we cannot measure the qualia of the field. There is a specific subjective experience of dissolving that occurs when the MLH scales to the matrix. It is the feeling of being carried. In my work on the inversiverse, I explored how systems of power use this carried feeling to bypass critical thought. When you are flooded with the oxytocin of the many, your ability to detect neuroceptive mismatches is significantly reduced. You become somatically groomed by the field. The linguistic ecology, words as field regulators. Finally, we must look at the linguistic ecology of the crowd. In the dyad, we use nervous system language NSL to co-regulate. In the field, we use field regulators. These are words or phrases that function as autonomic switches. Think of words like freedom, justice, us, or them. These aren't just nouns. In the matrix, they are tonal explosives. When a speaker utters these words with the correct sympathetic charge, they aren't conveying information. They are triggering a global state shift. The speaker uses their own vocal prosody to electrify the word. Because the crowd is already in a state of mirroring circuitry, electricity travels instantly through the entire field. The word becomes the signal that justifies the state, the threshold of awareness. As we reflect on this anatomy, we see that the resonance matrix is not a choice we make. It is an infrastructure we inhabit. Your nervous system was designed for this. It was designed to be open, to be porous, and to be entrained. The pulse of the crowd is simply the largest expression of the same mirror linguistic we see in the nursery. We are built to be regulated by the voices around us. But here is the inversion. While this entrainment gives us the beauty of the symphony and the power of the movement, it also makes us vulnerable to the invisible hands of the matrix. To be aware of the anatomy of the field is to begin to regain your sovereignty. When you understand why your heart is racing in that stadium, or why you feel that ineffable pull to join the chant, you are no longer just a node. You are an observer of the matrix. And in that observation, the mirror becomes a tool for freedom, rather than a cage of biology. The anatomy is clear, biology is ancient. But how do we live inside it? How do we identify the engineered mirror linguistics that are designed to hijack our vagal antenna? Welcome to the Lexicon Lab. If the previous sections were the heart and the anatomy of our journey, this is the operating room. This is where we take the pulse of the crowd and put it under the microscope. In the foundational work of the Mirror Linguistic Hypothesis, MLH, I developed the concept of nervous system language, NSL. I defined it as a conscious grammar for co-regulation, a way to speak that honors the physiological state of the listener. But in the resonance matrix, NSL is often used unconsciously or strategically to achieve collective entrainment. Today, we are going to decode the specific master scripts of the matrix. We are going to look at how the crowd uses phonetic weaponry, rhythmic anchors, and carrier words to bypass your critical thinking and speak directly to your brainstem. Phonetic weaponry, the sound of impact. In the Lexicon Lab, we don't start with the meaning of words. We start with their acoustics. In the field, the matrix uses specific phonetic structures to trigger immediate autonomic shifts. The plosive strike. Think of the sounds PTK. These are stop consonants. They require a total blockage of airflow followed by a sudden release. In a crowd chant, these plosives function as sympathetic spikes. When 10,000 people shout stop or fight, the sharp release of air mimics the sound of a physical blow or a predatory snap. Your amygdala doesn't need to know the context. It hears the crack of the sound and prepares for impact. The long vowel hush. Conversely, notice the sounds OU and ma. These are open, resonant vowels that allow for a continuous flow of air. When a crowd hums or chants AM or home, they are engaging in vagal grounding. These frequencies vibrate the chest and the larynx in a way that stimulates the vagus nerve. The matrix uses these sounds to create a global freeze or a global calm, a heavy oceanic resonance that pulls the field into a state of ventral vagal safety. The carrier word, somatic imprinting at scale, one of the most powerful tools in the matrix is the carrier word. As established in the MLH concept paper, words are not inert. They are carriers of physiological charge. In a collective field, the matrix identifies words that have been somatically imprinted through generations of cultural reinforcement. These are words like freedom, justice, traitor, patriot, home, or security. In the Lexicon Lab, we call these vagal hijackers. When a leader or a crowd uses a carrier word, they aren't using it for its dictionary definition. They are using it as a trigger signal. Because these words have been paired with high arousal states, war, revolution, ritual for centuries, they carry an inherited tonal charge. When the matrix speaks these words, your nervous system matches the ancestral charge. You feel a surge of meaning, but what you are actually experiencing is a mirrored autonomic peak. The word acts as a bridge, allowing the collective field to download a specific state directly into your fascia. Engineered mirror linguistics. The slogan as a spell. How does a political or corporate slogan work? Why does it stick? In the matrix, slogans are examples of engineered mirror linguistics. They are designed to achieve acoustic coherence with minimal cognitive friction. A successful slogan typically follows 3 NSL rules. 1. Rhythmic primacy. It must match the human heart rate or a simple walking pace, e.g., and make a mere Ica great again 4/4 time. This makes the slogan entrainable. Your body wants to move to it. 2. Prosodic simplicity. It is usually spoken with a falling cadence, certainty, or a rising spike, urgency. This tells your neuroception that the speaker is either an absolute authority or an urgent protector. 3. Semantic blur. The words must be vague enough that every individual in the field can project their own somatic lexicon onto them. By being blurry, the slogan avoids triggering the prefrontal cortex's critical analysis and stays in the affective circuitry. The grammar of the other, dehumanization as NSL. This is the darkest part of the Lexicon Lab. We must analyze how the matrix uses language to sever resonance. When a field moves into a collective fight state, the language shifts. We move away from the prosody of connection and into what we call the hardened syntax, categorization over description. Instead of a person who is suffering, the matrix says the problem. Objectification, using metaphors of vermin, machines, or natural disasters, e.g., a flood of people, a cancer on society. Tonal flattening. When talking about the other, the matrix adopts a monotone, clinical, or contemptuous tone. This is somatic misattunement. It tells your nervous system, do not mirror this person. They are not a body, they are a concept. By shifting the NSL, the matrix effectively turns off the mirror neurons for a specific group, allowing for mass-scale cruelty without the interference, empathy. Institutional dialects, the clinical freeze, the matrix isn't just found in stadiums. It exists in our institutions, hospitals, courtrooms, and corporate offices. Each has its own institutional dialect, a specific NSL profile designed to regulate the field into a state of compliant collapse or dorsal vagal shutdown. The clinical tone, high-pitched, flat, and overly articulated. It signals authority without intimacy. It tells your nervous system that you are an object to be processed, not a body to be held. The legalistic maze, using cognitive flooding complex, multisyllabic words, and convoluted syntax to overwhelm the prefrontal cortex. When the mind is confused, the body moves into a freeze or fawn response. The matrix uses this to ensure obedience. Identifying the hijack, a field guide. How do you know when your lexicon has been hijacked by the matrix? Here are the lab's diagnostic signs. 1. The we without an I. You find yourself using words or slogans that you haven't personally interrogated. The words feel borrowed or given. 2. Tonal mimicry. You notice your own voice changing its pitch or rhythm to match the person you are arguing with, even if you hate what they are saying. You are coercively entrained. 3. Somatic certainty. You feel a hardening in your chest or throat when a specific carrier word is mentioned. You aren't thinking, you are reacting. Reclaiming the lexicon. The goal of the lexicon lab is not just to observe the spells, but to learn how to break them. When you identify a carrier word being used against you, name it. That is a trigger signal. When you feel the rhythmic entrainment of a crowd, break the beat. Take a breath that is out of sync with the chant. Move your body in a way that doesn't match the global pulse. By introducing dissonance into the field, you reclaim your sovereignty. You become a regulated anchor, someone whose NSL is governed by their own internal state, not the engineered mirror linguistics of the matrix. Up to now, we have decoded the signals. We have identified the weaponry. We see how the matrix uses the very air we breathe to script our biology. Now the weight of this awareness needs to settle. Dramatic pause. The threshold of the many. We have traveled a long way in a short time. We have dissected the anatomy of the field. We have decoded the phonetic weaponry of the matrix. We have looked at the invisible hands that reach through the air and take hold of our heart rates. But as we established in the MLH foundational work, information without integration is just more noise. The mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, tells us that your nervous system is an open circuit. It is constantly being rewritten by the frequencies you inhabit. And right now, as you listen to my voice, as you process these complex theories of collective entrainment, your prefrontal cortex is working overtime. Your system is upregulated. It is time to cross the threshold. It is time to move from learning about the many to returning to the self. This is the somatic pause. In the lexicon of the matrix, we call this de-entrainment. It is the deliberate act of breaking the rhythmic spell of the world so that you can hear your own tonal blueprint once again. The philosophy of the 0 point. Before we move into the breath, let us understand the why. In a world built on large-scale synchrony, a world of constant digital pings, political roars, and industrial hums, silence is often treated as a void. We are taught to fear it, to fill it, to edit it out. But in LH field theory, silence is the 0 point. It is the only space where the mirror can be wiped clean. When you stand in a crowd, your vagal antenna is pulled outward. You are scanning the field for safety. Your mirror neurons are firing in sympathy with the thousands around you. This is an extroverted physiology. The somatic pause is an introverted physiology. It is the moment you tell your nervous system, the field is over there. I am here. It is the reclamation of the ineffable gap, the private space where you are not a node, but a sovereign being. The first anchor, the diaphragm as the engine of autonomy. I want you to bring your attention to your diaphragm, that large, dome-shaped muscle beneath your lungs. In the matrix, the crowd often dictates your breathing. In a state of collective flight, everyone's breath is high and shallow. In collective fight, it is held and pressurized. To de-entrain, you must reclaim the engine. Place a hand on your belly. As you breathe in, feel that dome drop. Feel the expansion, not just in your chest, but in your lower back, your sides, your seat. This is vagal grounding. By consciously slowing your breath, you are sending a signal to your brainstem that the pulse of the crowd no longer governs you. You are creating acoustic dissonance with the world, and in that dissonance you find your own rhythm. The second anchor, the larynx, and the internal hum now. Let's return to the borderland we discussed in the opening, the throat. The larynx is where your internal state becomes external sound. It is the gateway to the matrix. During the lexicon lab, we looked at how the crowd uses plosives to strike the nervous system. Now we will use resonance to soothe it. I want you to take a breath, and on the exhale, make a low, steady sound. A hum. Notice the vibration. Don't worry about the pitch. Just feel the buzz in your lips, your teeth, and deep in your chest. This is internal mirroring. You are using your own voice to vibrate your own vagus nerve. You are talking back to your nervous system in its own language, the language of frequency. In this hum, the tonal residue of the crowd begins to shake loose. The carrier words that were stuck in your fascia, the justice, the fear, the them, they lose their grip. You are vibrating them out of your tissue. You are becoming a clean mirror once again. The third anchor, the weight of the earth finally, feel your feet. The matrix lives in the air. It travels through sound waves, digital signals, and visual spells. But the earth is the ultimate regulator. Imagine that your nervous system is like a lightning rod. Throughout this episode, you have been absorbing the static of the collective field. You have been electrified by the theory and the scene. Use this pause to ground that electricity. As you exhale, imagine the charge of the many, the urgency of the crowd, the pressure of the synchrony, traveling down your spine, through your legs, and into the floor. The earth can hold it. The earth doesn't mirror the matrix. The earth simply is. The threshold of integration. Stay in this stillness for a few more moments. Notice if your jaw has loosened. Notice if the lump in your throat has softened. Notice if your heart has found a pace that feels like home rather than the many. You are currently standing at the threshold of the many. You have the awareness of the field, but you have the anchor of the self. This is the goal of nervous system language NSL, to be able to move through the matrix without being overwritten by it. In my work on invisible hands, I discussed and said that the goal isn't to spot monsters everywhere, it's to stop abandoning yourself. The somatic pause is where you stop abandoning yourself. It is where you remind your body that even in the center of the loudest crowd, there is a first word that belongs only to you. The return. When you are ready, gently open your eyes if they were closed. Don't rush back into the thinking state. Carry this 0 point with you as we move into the final sections of our journey. You have integrated the frequency. You have cleared the mirror. Now we are ready to look at how we can return to the field, not as a passive node, but as a regulated anchor. We have breathed, we have hummed, we have grounded. The pulse of the crowd is still out there, but now you have a rhythm of your own to match it against. The reframe spectrum, recalibrating the field. We have felt the pulse. We have analyzed the anatomy. We have breathed into the 0 point of the pause. Now we must do the most difficult thing of all. We must go back. We do not live our lives in permanent silence. We live in the world. We live in the matrix. And the goal of this work is not to hide from the collective field, but to learn how to stand in it without being subsumed by it. In the original framework of the mirror linguistic hypothesis, MLH, I introduced nervous system language NSL as a grammar for co-regulation. In a dyad, NSL is about helping another body find safety. But in the resonance matrix, NSL becomes a tool for sovereign regulation. This is the reframe spectrum. It is a series of linguistic and somatic shifts that allow you to move from being a passive node, automatically entraining to the crowd, becoming a regulated anchor. A regulated anchor is a person whose internal frequency is so grounded, so congruent, that they actually begin to re-script the field around them. They introduce a safety signal into a field of threat. The first spectrum, internal reframing, the private lexicon. Before you can speak a single word into the field, you must reframe the mirror inside yourself. When you are in a crowd, whether it's a chaotic workplace, a heated protest, or a high-pressure social event, your neuroception is firing at 1,000 cycles per second. The first step in the spectrum is to name the state, not the story. The trap. Your mind says, I am terrified. Everyone here is dangerous. Something horrible is about to happen. This is the narrative hijack. It accelerates your sympathetic activation. The NSL reframe. I'm standing in a high arousal field. My heart rate is mirroring the ambient frequency. This is physiology, not prophecy. By reframing the experience from a moral story to a biological observation, you create the first layer of the ineffable gap. You acknowledge the mirror without becoming the reflection. The second spectrum, breaking the tonal mimicry. As we decoded in the lexicon lab, the matrix uses tonal mimicry to bind you into the field. You find yourself raising your voice because everyone is raising theirs. You find yourself whispering because the room is heavy with institutional freeze. To be a regulated anchor, you must practice acoustic dissonance. The reframe. If the field is sharp, high-pitched, fast, plosive, your reframe is to speak low, slow, and resonant. The practice. When someone in the field speaks to you with the precision trigger of anger, your body's impulse is to match their pitch. Instead, you drop your voice by half an octave. You lengthen your vowels. You use your voice to vibrate your own vagus nerve even while you are speaking to them. You aren't just being calm. You are introducing a vagal anchor into the field. Because of the mirror linguistic effect, the person speaking to you will find it physiologically harder to maintain their high arousal state when your voice refuses to mirror them. You are hacking the matrix through somatic integrity. The third spectrum, the carrier word reframe in the field. Carrier words, freedom, traitor, justice, crisis, are used to electrify the masses. The reframe spectrum requires us to discharge these words before they land in our fascia. The reframe strategy, definitional grounding. Example, a crowd is chanting traitor. Your body feels the plosive strike of the T and the R. The internal reframe. That word is being used as a sympathetic trigger. I refuse the charge. I return to the definition. By mentally stripping the tonal charge from the word and looking at it as a mere symbol again, you invert the manipulation. You take the battery out of the world. Leveling up, NSL for collective states. How do we reframe our response to the four primary survival dialects of the crowd? 1. Reframing the collective fight, the angry crowd, field state. Aggressive, loud, forward-leaning. Anchor response. I hear the intensity in the room. I am staying with my breath. This is a ventral vagal statement. It acknowledges the field state without joining it. 2. Reframing the collective flight, the hurried panicked field state. Fragmented, fast, shallow breathing. Anchor response. There is time. We are here now. Using the prosody of presence to slow the entrainment. 3. Reframing the collective freeze, the heavy institutional field state, monotone, rigid, silent, suppressed. Anchor response, small rhythmic movements and melodic inflection. By adding a slight musicality to your voice in a frozen room, you signal to other nervous systems that it is safe to thaw. You are using linguistic warmth as a de-icer for the field. 4. Reframing the collective fawn, the over-accommodating field state, high-pitched, nice, boundary-less. The anchor response, no, spoken with a falling cadence and a grounded chest. In a fawn field, a clean, non-aggressive no acts like a structural beam, giving others a point of reference to find their own boundaries again. The acoustic shield, the language of boundaries in the inversiverse, I explored how the world is built to keep you asleep. In the resonance matrix, sleep is the trance of entrainment. Your acoustic shield is the use of boundary setting NSL. The reframe, I am not available for this frequency. The application, you don't always have to say these words out loud. You say them somatically. You adjust your posture, you settle your weight, and you voice your boundary through the prosody of finality. When you speak from a state of acoustic coherence, where your internal no matches your external tone, you create a neuroceptive barrier. Manipulators and engineered mirror linguistics struggle to find a grip on a somatically congruent person. You become Socratically untouchable, the sovereign voice. Speaking into the matrix, finally, we reach the end of the spectrum, contribution. Once you are regulated, once you have reframed the charge, you can speak into the matrix to shift it. This is the capability of the MLH that can change cultures. The reframe, I am speaking safety back into the story. Practice, you use prosodic reframing. You take a triggering word or a tense situation and you revoice it. You speak the truth of the moment with a tone of ventral vagal invitation. I notice we are all very loud right now. I wonder what happens if we take a breath. In that one sentence you have 1. Named the field state, mirroring. 2. Introduced a somatic pause, regulation. 3. Used melodic prosody, safety. You have just performed a mirror linguistic intervention. You have used the matrix to heal the matrix. The cost of anchorage, we must be honest in the lab. Being a regulated anchor is exhausting. It requires you to go against the evolutionary tide of the many. But as we argued in moral and ethical inversions, sometimes leaving is the ethical act, and sometimes staying regulated is the revolutionary act. By refusing to join the collective dysregulation, you provide a biological North Star for everyone else in the field. You remind them that another frequency is possible. You have the spectrum, you have the reframes, you have the acoustic shield, but theory is just a map. To truly own these tools, you have to use them when the pulse of the crowd is at its loudest. You have to practice becoming the anchor when the waves are high. Integration prompt. Becoming the anchor integration is not theory, it is repetition. We have done enough thinking for today. We have mapped the neurobiology, we have decoded the lexicon, and we have felt the pulse. But if you turn off this recording and simply go back to your day as a passive node in the matrix, then we have only succeeded in adding more noise to your system. The mirror linguistic hypothesis proposes that you can rewrite your tonal blueprint, but you cannot do it by thinking about it. You do it by speaking safety back into your story through your actions, your breath, and your presence. Today, I am giving you your first set of field work assignments. These are not exercises to pass. They are experiments in sovereign regulation. They are the tools that you can use to become a regulated anchor in a world that is designed to keep you entrained. Field work, the ambient audit, passive observation. Between now and the next episode, perform an ambient audit of the fields you inhabit. Choose one public space this week, a supermarket, a transit station, a park, or even a digital town square like a loud social media thread. Don't listen to the words. For the first 5 minutes, treat the language of the crowd as if it were a foreign dialect you don't understand. Listen to the prosody. Is the collective song of the room rising in pitch, anxiety, flight? Is it heavy and monotone, freeze? Is it sharp and staccato, fight? Track the mirror. What is your body doing in response? Are your shoulders lifting? Is your breath becoming shallow? Notice how the resonance matrix is attempting to write its state onto your nervous system. The rhythmic break, active dissonance. Once you have identified the global pulse of a field, I want you to practice breaking the beat. If you are in a hurried environment where everyone is moving and speaking at a frantic flight pace, find your own tempo. Intentionally walk 20% slower than the crowd. Speak with a falling cadence. When you order your coffee or answer a question, speak with a tone of grounded finality. Observe the ripple. Does the person serving you slow down in response? Does the acoustic coherence of the immediate 5-foot radius around you shift? This is the MLH in action. By refusing to mirror the dysregulated field, you are introducing a safety signal. You are testing the hypothesis that one regulated body can influence the matrix. The somatic journal, decoding the first word when you return home, sit with a pen or a voice recorder. I want you to move past the thinking brain and speak directly from the body brain. Ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. What was the carrier word that hit me hardest today? Was it a political slogan, a criticism from a boss, a demand from a family member? Don't analyze the meaning. Describe the charge. Where did it land? Did it close your throat or sink your stomach? 2. Where did I abandon my own resonance to fit the field? Did you find yourself using a compliance tone to appease someone? Did you join a chant or a gossip session just to avoid the social rejection circuitry of the matrix? 3. What phrase could I speak right now that would make my body exhale? This is your gift of NSL. Is it have time? Is it no? Is it I'm here? Say it out loud. Listen to the resonance of your own voice in the quiet of the room. That is your new first word. The ineffable challenge finally. I want you to find one moment this week where you experience the ineffable gap. Find a moment where you are moved by a piece of music, a sunset, or a moment of genuine connection with another individual. In that moment, notice that science can't touch what you're feeling. Your HRV might be high, your oxytocin might be flowing, but the quality of the resonance belongs only to you. Hold that feeling. That is your sovereignty. That is the part of you that the matrix can never fully own. A note on resistance. As you do this field work, you will feel resistance. Your nervous system has been somatically groomed for years to prioritize belonging over autonomy. When you choose not to entrain, you might feel a spike of survival anxiety. That is the work. Your body is learning a new dialect. It is learning that it is safe to have its own rhythm. It is learning that you are no longer a child who must mirror the caregiver to survive. You are an adult who can mirror the truth to thrive. Closing whisper, the resonance return. We have reached the final threshold of this journey. We have stood at the center of the mirror linguistic hypothesis and watched as the reflection grew from the intimate 2-person dyad to the vast, shimmering surface of the resonance matrix. Take a moment now to notice the air in the room where you sit. Notice the state of your skin, the depth of your pulse, the weight of your thoughts. You are no longer the same node that began this episode. You have been informed not just by data but by frequency. The synthesis. What we have remembered in this first exploration of the matrix. We have done more than study theory. We have mapped the invisible architecture of our shared existence. We began by re-establishing the quintessential mirror. We remembered the radical truth that meaning is not a cognitive achievement but a physiological event. We stripped away the illusion of the dictionary and looked instead at the heart rate, the jaw tension, and the tonal charge that words carry as biological batteries. We acknowledged that your nervous system was spoken into existence long before you understood a single noun, that you inherited somatic lexicon from the very first breath you took in the presence of another. Then we scaled the mirror. We stepped into field theory and looked at the pulse of the crowd. We saw how the individual I is often an island that gets subsumed by the oceanic us during moments of large-scale synchrony. We walked through the square at dusk and felt the visceral reality of entrainment, the moment your breathing stops being yours and starts belonging to the field. In the anatomy of the field, we looked at the autonomy and clinical hardware of the body, the mirror neurons, the vagal antennae, and the heart rate synchrony, which makes us so porous to the frequencies of others. We realized that our biology is not a closed circuit, but a co-regulatory ecology constantly seeking acoustic coherence with the many. We entered the lexicon lab to decode the master scripts of the matrix. We identified the phonetic weaponry of the plosive strike and the vagal hijackers found in our cultural carrier words. We saw how the matrix uses engineered mirror linguistics to bypass our critical minds and script our bodies into obedience or rage. And finally, we practiced the sovereignty of the pause. We provided the reframe spectrum, the tools to move from being a passive node to becoming a regulated anchor. We learned that by introducing acoustic dissonance and reclaiming our own rhythm, we don't just save ourselves, we offer a safety signal back to the field. The ineffable conclusion. As we wrap this first movement, we must return to the ineffable gap. Throughout this episode, I have given you labels: ventral, vagal, entrainment, prosody, and NSL. But labels are just fingers pointing at the moon. The true depth of what we have explored today lies in the qualia of your own experience. It is the feeling of that lump in your throat softening during the somatic pause. It is the sudden clarity you felt when you realized that your anxiety in a crowd wasn't a personal failure, but a biological mirror. The mirror linguistic hypothesis reminds us that while science can measure the pulse, it cannot capture the meaning of the resonance. That meaning belongs to you. It is the private, sacred space within the matrix where the first word is still being whispered. A look ahead, the architecture of silence. But the pulse of the crowd is only one way the matrix communicates. The field isn't just composed of flesh and blood, it is held by the very walls we inhabit. In our next episode, we will move from the roar of the stadium to the heavy, storied silence of our structures. We will explore the architecture of silence, environmental linguistics. Every space you enter carries a tonal residue, a physiological frequency left behind by the intentions and the histories of those who built it and those who suffered or celebrated within it. We will ask and explore: why does your breath catch when you walk into a courtroom, even if you've done nothing wrong? How do the sterile, high-frequency hushes of a hospital corridor function as a silent NSL script that tells your body to go into dorsal vagal shutdown? And what is the acoustic coherence found in the towering heights of a cathedral, where the architecture itself is designed to expand your lungs and pull your gaze upward into a state of spiritual entrainment? We will learn how to read the somatic blueprint of the rooms you live in, and how to stay regulated in spaces that were designed to make you feel small. We will discover that silence is never empty. It is a language all its own. You are a resonator in a world of echoes. To live in the resonance matrix is to understand that your voice is a gift of frequency, and your ear is a gateway to the soul of the many. As you walk out from this frequency and back into the noise of knowing, do not be afraid of the entrainment. Do not fear the mirrors, simply notice them. Be the anchor that refuses the plosive strike of the storm. Be the breath that remembers the 0 point when the crowd begins to scream. Be the inversion of the field, the one who speaks safety where there is threat and presence where there is absence. Your physiology is your greatest asset. Your tone is your most profound legacy. And your awareness is the only bridge across the ineffable gap that leads us back to one another. Carry the frequency, trust the signal, and always, always listen for the resonance beneath the words. Until next time, you've been listening to the Resonance Matrix. I'm James Miller.